Welcome back to Lawyer's IQ, your daily breakdown and analysis of the Diddy criminal trial. We're diving deep into day 15, and let me tell you, it was an absolute roller coaster. We had some incredibly powerful and frankly disturbing testimony from a key witness, Deonte Nash, who served as a stylist for both Diddy and Cassie. And if that wasn't enough, the morning session saw a dramatic move from Diddy's defense team as they pushed for a mistrial. So, there's a lot to unpack. Let's get right into it. Let's start with Deonte Nash. This individual was in a unique position, working closely with Cassie, and by extension, Diddy, from around 2007 to 2012. This was a time when, according to earlier testimony from Capricorn Clark, Bad Boy Records was heavily investing in and promoting Cassie as their flagship artist. Nash, as her stylist, was constantly by her side, handling everything from outfits to makeup and hair. His testimony revealed he was paid by Bad Boy, underscoring his central role in Cassie's professional life and inevitably her personal orbit with Diddy. On the stand, Nash came across as quite an engaging personality. Reports from the courtroom suggest he was even entertaining at times, eliciting some laughter from the jury and generally endearing himself to them. That can be a subtle but important factor in how a witness's credibility is perceived. However, the mood shifted dramatically as Nash got into the core of what he witnessed. His testimony was described as sensationalistic, and it's easy to see why. He recounted numerous instances where he allegedly saw Diddy physically abuse Cassie. One of the most harrowing accounts involved an incident at Cassie's house, where Nash claimed Diddy smashed her face into a bed frame. According to Nash, things were so dire that he and another assistant, a woman named Mia, who is also expected to testify and is believed to be victim 3 in the indictment, felt compelled to physically intervene. They jumped on Diddy to try to stop the assault. Nash testified that Diddy eventually pulled back, and in a chilling moment, after seeing Cassie's bloodied face, allegedly said to them, "Look what you guys made me do." That statement alone, if believed by the jury, speaks volumes about control and the deflection of responsibility. This kind of testimony from Nash is critical for the prosecution. Up to this point, while Cassie's own testimony was undoubtedly powerful, the defense could and did try to frame it as a typical he said, she said situation, common in cases involving intimate relationships and alleged abuse. But Nash offers something different: third-party, eyewitness corroboration. He's wasn't a romantic partner. He was an employee, an observer who claims to have seen the violence firsthand. This helps the prosecution paint a broader picture, that the alleged abuse wasn't confined to private moments between Diddy and Cassie, but happened in front of others. That staff members knew about it, that they tried to stop it. It adds a layer of objective reality to Cassie's claims, and Nash's testimony didn't stop at physical abuse. It also supported the government's sex trafficking allegations. He told the court that Diddy threatened to release sexually explicit videos of Cassie. Nash said she was extremely worried about this. In a particularly revealing exchange, Nash said he asked Cassie if Diddy wouldn't be implicating himself by releasing such videos, assuming he was in them too. According to Nash, Cassie's response was a bombshell. She allegedly told him no because Diddy would force her to have sex with other men, and that's what he was filming. Nash said Cassie told him she initially complied because Diddy wanted her to, but over time, she did it out of fear. Fear that Diddy would physically harm her if she refused. Now here's where things get legally intricate, especially when it comes to the hearsay rule. What Cassie allegedly told Nash about being forced to sleep with other men and fearing Diddy, that's an out-of-court statement. If the prosecution tried to use it to prove that Diddy actually did those things, it would typically be considered inadmissible hearsay. But there's a key exception, the state of mind rule. The prosecution can argue that Cassie's statements aren't being offered to prove Diddy did those exact things, but to show her mental state at the time, her fear, her sense of coercion, her lack of genuine consent. That's directly relevant to the sex trafficking charges, because force, fraud, or coercion are the key elements the government has to prove. By using this exception, The testimony aims to demonstrate the psychological and emotional impact of Diddy's alleged actions, helping to establish the coercive environment required for a trafficking conviction. Beyond abuse and coercion, Nash's testimony also touched on incidents that could support the broader RICO case. The Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act. That law is designed to target ongoing criminal enterprises. Nash claimed Diddy became physically violent, with him on at least one occasion. He also described an incident where Diddy, along with one of his alleged enforcers, came to Nash's home, stole his phone, and forced him to drive them to a hotel where Cassie was staying because Diddy couldn't find her. Nash said that afterward, he discovered his backpack, his ID, about $1,000 in cash, and his iPad were all missing. Those alleged acts, intimidation, theft, and violence, are the kinds of predicate acts prosecutors use to build a RICO case. Let's now shift to the mistrial motion that dominated the morning session. This didn't involve Nash, but rather an earlier witness, an arson investigator. 2. Set the scene. You'll recall that Kid Cudi testified about a break-in at his home. He later described how, a couple of weeks after the break-in, his Porsche was firebombed. The arson investigator testified that fingerprints of an unknown female were recovered from the car fire. Then the questioning shifted back to the earlier break-in. The investigator confirmed that fingerprints had been collected at the scene back in December 2011. But then came the twist. Those specific break-in fingerprints were destroyed by the LAPD in August 2012. That's a surprisingly short window for evidence to be destroyed, especially in a case potentially tied to a celebrity. As soon as that revelation came out, Diddy's defense team jumped on it. They demanded a mistrial. Their argument had two parts. First, they claimed that by placing the destroyed break-in fingerprints alongside the existing prints from the car fire, the prosecution was trying to imply a connection between the two events, a connection they could no longer definitively prove. Second, and more significantly, they argued that just mentioning destroyed evidence in a trial involving a wealthy, powerful defendant could unfairly plant the idea that Diddy somehow orchestrated its destruction. That kind of insinuation, they argued, was so prejudicial that it tainted the whole trial. The judge ultimately denied the mistrial motion. That's not surprising. Judges rarely grant mistrials because it would mean starting the entire process over. However, the judge did take action. He told the jury to disregard the testimony about the destroyed fingerprints. He instructed them not to consider it during deliberations, as if it had never been said. Of course, whether jurors can truly unhear something like that is debatable. As the saying goes, you can't unring a bell. During our original live stream, there were some interesting viewer questions about this. One person asked, if Diddy really had sex tapes of Cassie, why didn't he release them after the breakup? That's a fair question, but based on Nash's testimony, the power wasn't in the release. It was in the threat of release. The threat gave Diddy control. Actually releasing the tapes would have burned that leverage. Plus, as Nash pointed out, if Diddy was in those videos, releasing them would implicate him. The real allegation is that he was filming Cassie with other men under coercion. That creates an even darker picture. Another viewer, Prince5050, commented that it's still all he said, she said, and the prosecution needs more evidence. With all due respect, this trial is well beyond he said, she said. We have Cassie's testimony. We now have Deonte Nash, a third-party witness, backing up major details. We have the hotel surveillance footage that shows Diddy attacking Cassie. We have testimony about financial control, intimidation, and connections. To the Kid Cudi incidents, the prosecution is stacking up evidence, layer upon layer. Whether it's enough for a conviction remains to be seen, but it's clearly more than just one person's word. So, Day 15 ended with powerful and potentially game-changing testimony, especially from Nash. The prosecution is trying to prove a consistent pattern of abuse, control, and criminal activity. The defense is watching closely for any misstep, as we saw with the mistrial motion. This trial is far from over, and the stakes keep getting higher. We'll be back to break down all the developments as they happen. Thanks for joining us on Lawyers IQ.